Now it's time for our next presentation here. We would like to welcome Jason West and Matt Eddy, Directors for Customer Managed Services at Refinitiv. And the two are now going to give us a few insights into the field cloud and customer journeys. And I would like to hand over directly. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So, hi, as mentioned, my name's Matt Eddy, based in London, but over for a couple of days to hopefully share some journeys around what we've been experiencing with our customers in terms of moving their real times to the cloud. I'd like to introduce Jason as well.
Yeah, so Jason West, I run the real-time managed distribution service business for LSEG Refinitiv.
Okay, so we've got about 3 hours of material, so we're going to try and cram that in to, what have we got, half an hour or so. We've only got a couple of slides actually, because what we're going to run through is sort of some material that we've been working with customers and has really resonated. Thought it'd be useful to sort of share that with you guys. What we also really want is any questions, any comments, throw them at us. We're happy to kind of field those as we go along, or we'll be around afterwards as well to discuss as we sort of walk through the slides. Okay. So without further ado, this might look. I want to make it clear this isn't a marketing, and we're not sales guys. We're actually sort of business strategy. But this slide here talks a lot about kind of the products that we use, but it's equally applicable to probably a whole range of other competitors and consumers and peer organisations. And what this really attempts to show is kind of the evolution of a deployed enterprise system. So my responsibility is around RTDS and DACs and the feeds and all of this kind of good stuff that is, well, some of you might know as TREP or RMDS, all the kind of the evolutions of our enterprise platform. What we have is a huge array of customers that typically have all of this deployed, all of their infrastructure on site, and they're doing the typical kind of 5-year CapEx refresh. What we've been seeing over the past couple of years is a lot more customers are coming to us and saying, how can I start that journey to pick this up and move that out to the cloud so I'm ready to go when my business is. So we're really kind of talking about the middleware layer that supports all of the consumers, all of the producers out there. So whether that's our Refinitiv feed, competitive feeds, third-party feeds, and all of your front, middle, back office applications. So how do we start that journey? Really, we've got Real-Time Optimized, which is our AWS-based cloud service, starting to get consumers, customers sort of connected into that with like a non-mission critical workload. We're not talking about low latency. We're not talking about sort of the massive scale enterprise, millions of instruments, etc. Start small. Start with a workload that can be autonomous and can be moved out to the cloud completely. Yeah, so anything that's got like a major sort of database sat back on site, zero point in doing that. I think one of the big learnings that I think we've learned and a lot of our customers are learning on this journey is that cloud commercials are a much more complex beast than we actually give them credit for. A lot of people talk about egress costs, ingress costs. There's transfer costs, there's obviously the compute, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into that. And what we've actually spent more time with our customers is actually walking them through what costs they're going to incur. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I think if you're going to take away is understand what that cost model looks like. It needs to be completely in the cloud. Don't start passing data backwards and forwards. We've been talking about taking the query to the data rather than bringing all the data on site. You don't want to be doing that in that kind of cloud environment. So start connecting out, learn the connectivity, the costs, etc., and then start to move those applications further out. So pick that up, install it in the cloud, and then start to understand how that looks. The biggest lesson really here, especially from a consumer perspective, is that it's all of the internal workings. You've got your own cloud security teams, you've got your own InfoSec teams that are going to clamp down on all the agility and the flexibility that the cloud offers. So how can you actually work through that? That's probably one of the biggest sort of lead times you're going to see. Then as we move across, start to pick our services up. We've started installing all of our RTDS software out in the cloud. We're not supporting multicast at the moment, so we're doing it in a unicast. We've got a whole new reference architecture that we're trying to support as well. So it's quite an evolution. Over the past sort of 3 years, we've injected a lot of development resources in building those capabilities up. But as you can see, we've still got a large presence down here. in the bricks and mortar data center on-premise, and a lot of those are kind of the more mission-critical, high-touch applications. Finally, kind of nirvana state for many customers, and this might take 6 months or it might take 6 years to get from 3 to 4, is then pulling all of the applications and all of the consumers and all of our infrastructure out, installing that in the cloud, maybe with a full tick or our conflated feed, and being able to drive all of that within the cloud. So we've already got customers at this stage in production. We've got customers kind of still in this sort of development environment here. It really is one of those things where each end state is going to be unique, and it really is, from our perspective, helping our customers understand how we get there. So that's kind of what we've really been working on over the past several years, and say it's starting to bear fruit now. What we did want to do, though, was then walk you through probably behind all of this, or probably on top of this, is how our customers are starting to look at using our data, our services, and the cloud provider services to actually create solutions that are fit for business. And Jason, as he mentioned, is in charge of our Refinitiv managed services. Prior to that, was a solution business director, and a lot of the solutions they were coming up with in the customer base were about tri-party agreements, the customer, the cloud provider, and ourselves to come up with solutions. So why don't I step through to the next slide?
One question.
Yep, sorry, go on.
How much latency can you ensure with the cloud solution?
So latency is obviously a big topic. So with this setup that we've got at the moment with our optimized feed, that's conflated anyway. So it's, again, from the workload perspective, it's going to be something that can tolerate a third of a second sort of update rates. Where we then want to move, if you do want full tick in the cloud, is that's obviously potentially going to be more latency sensitive. We've been benchmarking through cloud providers, so if it's in a metropolitan area, it's sort of in the range of about 8 to 12 milliseconds kind of from our feed through the cloud provider and down to the consumer application. Obviously that changes when you move into different availability zones, different regions, etc. So again, trying to map your services to the vendor services, etc. It's kind of again, another learning, because we might be in one availability zone that can add sort of 20 milliseconds and a bit more variability, a bit more jitter into that as well.
And I guess just to add to Matt's point, so a lot of our clients who've moved to stage 4 are wealth clients, investment clients, so they're not that bothered about the latency, and they're happy to move the stack out. So in the US, there's quite a few wealth clients who've come to us, and we've helped them migrate their entire stack out from their data centers, and we're seeing more and more of that coming in now. So generally, they push to 4. In a previous life, I used to run market data at Citibank, and 3 years ago, I took them to this place for it was an analytics engine that an FX business needed, but they were happy with the latency. So we built that in Google Cloud with Refinitiv data flowing into it. But when we speak to our tier 1 clients, the investment banks, JP Morgans, the cities of this world, they're not going to get there for 5, 6, 7 years, but they're happy to start moving middle office, back office, compliance type architecture and infrastructure out. So we're seeing more and more of that coming over the last 18 months.
So the tier 2 banks, you would imagine they will move in the next architectural redesign?
Yeah.
Because they don't have such a major enforcement on latency.
Exactly. And so the real-time optimized that Matt owns, we're having more and more clients sign up for trials of that because they want to see what it looks like, how it works. And they're comfortable with the 3 second or the 3 updates a second, whereas they might have a full tick latency feed, and they go, actually, we don't need this for this specific business. We're going to take it this way. But they build cloud native applications really quickly, and then we just feed them directly. So we're seeing more and more of that coming down the track.
We're also working with all the cloud providers, the major cloud providers, on this as well, because obviously not only this is kind of our products that the customers use, but obviously from when we ingest data, you see all these different announcements coming out that the CME signed with Google and NASDAQ, with AWS, etc. We've been working with all of those cloud providers on multicast ingest as well to make sure that is performant enough, and obviously around that latency is a big issue as well. So it's a maturing landscape. It's probably not there yet, and I think it'll be a few more years at this point before we get there. So, yeah, another question, sorry?
So first a comment, I took a little offense when he said security would clamp down and slow it. I was in Allianz and we actually pushed for the cloud because this IT CIO had made a statement in 2013, we will never go to the cloud. And in 2015, we were pushing for the cloud strategy. The main thing for me, the question is that one thing that I want to clarify is that a lot of times the cloud consultants always say everything cloud first, cloud only, right?
Yep.
But I think a lot of organizations have not done their homework
Agreed.
in doing that security aspect.
Yeah.
And secondly, they do not understand the shared ownership model that cloud actually requires. But a lot of organizations and sales consultants of cloud just say, just put everything to the cloud, it's all done and managed.
Yep. And at a high level, that's an easy statement to make. The devil really is in the detail, and like I say, that's where the kind of the free reign, everyone's signing up for their own, put your credit card down, you can buy your cloud access. Yes, you can, but then that doesn't work at enterprise scale and in regulated industries.
That's the second point I wanted to ask. So since last year, we have been trying to identify how to solve the Central Court EU ruling about Schrems 2, where it kind of has put everything into question. Can we send anything across the border?
Yep.
Especially out of EU, anything pretty much, even a name is considered out of question at this moment.
Yep.
How are you managing that or clarifying that for your clients and because it seems like most organizations cannot go cloud only. It's kind of a hybrid kind of environment that they have,
Yeah.
especially banks and all.
Stage 4 is really an extreme, and we do have clients that are there, and again, it's kind of a mandate from on high. We're shutting down our data centers, everything's to the cloud. Or customers at a smaller scale that are born in the cloud from day one. That's easy, they don't have all of that technology debt. Some of the applications in those black boxes, an example, customers have lost the source code, the developers have retired, whatever it is, there's real world that you still have to suffer with. So I think from your question though, that is obviously the cloud providers are very, very keen to say everything's fine. They're hiring up all of the best kind of regulators out there because they need to be mature in that space. Because if they don't solve these questions, obviously there's going to be implications as well for them. So it limits their business.
And just to add to that, so the UBSs and Credit Suisses of this world have landing zones built by Azure or AWS in Switzerland. The data stays there. But the cloud companies have been very slow. They're getting faster to react to financial services. They don't understand trading, banking, regulations, compliance, but they're starting to. And I think they're hiring a lot of people from investment banks to force their understanding of how they can service us.
The problem has not remained technology only. So the ruling has kind of put into question if the board members of Microsoft and Google can be subpoenaed to release the data. So that's where the trick was okay, it's not in our hands anymore, so how do we resolve this?
Yep. Yeah, there's much more emphasis on and operational resiliency around that, an accountable individual, etc. So, yeah, that's kind of where the fun stops for a lot of customers because the real world requirements kick in. So, was there another question? Sorry.
Yeah, on the other side, on the more procurement side, you guys, when you start putting this data into the cloud, obviously there's a lot of contracts with exchanges and whatnot that come with it. Are you guys have you guys got a team or something that can assist with that kind of topic, or is that something, well, actually, no, you have to do your contracts with your exchanges?
So
third parties and whatnot. Beyond the statement, we have a website with third party terms.
yeah, so we are doing that, and it's a great point because a lot of the exchanges, a lot of the venues that provide data are also having to learn this new world, this new infrastructure, this new model. So we've been educating those guys. Obviously, we have exchange managers that communicate that. We're trying to get ahead of the curve and actually sort of front load all of those so that they are aware that there's a change in the consumption model. But we've gone through this before when we've moved all of our customers from a customer managed environment to a Refinitiv managed data center. It's the same. A cloud is just in someone else's data center. It's still the same concept for those exchanges.
The difference is I'm taking a type of data from you or whether I'm actually putting my application.
Well, so just to that point, we have lots of clients that say, we want the data we pay you for today, and we want it in Azure or Google or wherever. From a legacy perspective, the exchanges need to know where that data was being dropped off a physical address. We're doing that now, and we're talking to exchanges where we might cross-connect in a co-location to Azure or AWS or Google, and that's the drop-off point. And, you know, if you already pay for the data and you're subscribed to it, we'll drop it off in both places, and it's fine. The exchanges are getting to understand that. It's like the CSPs. It's a journey everyone's going on, but we do feel we have to drag the venues along with us to understand what we're doing.
And there's obviously revenue retention for them as well. They think, you know, and if there's any venues or exchanges here, I'm sure it's a concern, right? Is there going to be erosion here? You know, it's kind of an arms race. Everyone's got to keep up to date with the latest developments.
The exchanges are well equipped already with their contracts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of revenue behind it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a big enabler for everyone, right? So our sort of USP and the reason that we have customers in our consolidated feed is because we do all the hard work and the heavy lift of normalizing and putting it into a standard symbology and data model, etc. You know, if you're buying 50 different exchanges, then you've got 50 data models to support. There is overhead there as well. So obviously, and we might talk about that in a little while as well. But yeah, there's pros and cons, I guess. Was there one more question? Otherwise, we'll move on. Sorry. No? Okay. Yeah. So the next few slides are just some real-world examples. We've kind of, you know, obscured the client names from these, but these are some of the solutions that we've been working with, and it starts out, as Jason will go into, sort of very small, tactical, quick to spin up, you know, quick to fail type initiatives, and a lot of these have then matured into sort of products as well. So Jason, why don't you walk through this example?
So this one here is us and Azure, but it could be Google, could be Azure, could be anyone. So what we're finding is the business use cases on the right over here, we're having a lot of analysts, data scientists, quants, desk heads, traders come to us and say, we want to do some intraday analysis on the data we have. We don't want to buy a load of hardware and servers and spin it up and build an application internally, so can you help us out? And a lot of the time we'll work with Azure, the client, and ourselves all in the room together. And what we've got here basically is, I guess, an analytics engine, which feeds these business use cases on the right-hand side.
Do you want to read them out? They're probably quite small.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I'll go through the flow and then we'll get to the cases. So capturing the data is the first one. How do we get it into Azure? So we can use cross-connects, we can use these, I guess, these connectivity types to get the data into somebody's container. Along the bottom, you'll see that we continue to stream data all the way through. So this could be full-tick real-time, or it could be real-time optimized from AWS, feeding into this. We also stream the data up to an Azure data lake here, which will preload with 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years worth of data for the products they're looking for. And that will also be fed here from I guess, a blob storage file that comes in from here. So we'll capture the data, we'll process it here, and we can do streaming analytics at this point here. Obviously, we'll push it up to the data lake as well. So we're capturing, we're processing the data in real time along the bottom and then into store up here. And a lot of the time, this is where we stop as a company. A lot of our clients want to do this type of thing themselves. So here they're using, you know, Azure ML and Synapses up the top here. Or we can build this for them. And we're seeing more and more now, especially for intraday analytics, TWAP, VWAP calculations across multiple venues, that we have clients come to us and say, can you just build this for us? Give us an API into here, and we'll run the data and the queries and anything we need to do, we'll do here ourselves. So this is what Matt alluded to earlier. It's bringing the query to the data instead of the data into the building for the query. So you don't have to store it in a big, you know, storage array somewhere. You've got the data lake which you can query as well as the intraday data here. And these are some of the user cases. So pre-trade, pre-market open, you can use yesterday's data, you can spin up and do some calculations on that, and as soon as the market opens, you can do the diff across here. TWAP, VWAP calculations, we're now doing this as a service. So many people come to us and say, look, we've got 6 different businesses, we all want to do the same thing, but with different data sets. can you give us a solution for this? So we can do it in AWS, Google, or Azure, and then we'll just give them the file. So they'll either connect to us, HTTPS into us, or we'll send the file direct to them, post the calculation. So these are the type of things that we do now, and we're seeing more and more businesses come to us who are already clients saying, you know, I don't want to spend a load of CapEx to do this. I just want to pay you guys an OpEx model with our CSP partner, Azure in this case. Can you help us build this thing? And normally, this one that we built for an Azure client, it took about 2 weeks to spin it up. It cost us about $400 to do the POC, and then it went live the week after. So they just pay us an OpEx model. The data we're streaming in here, they already have a license for and is being delivered on premise anyway. So we'll just give, you know, they don't pay any more for the data, but they just pay to connect to the data.
I think that's the big game changer that we're seeing, that agility, right? You know, weeks to do this instead of procuring a server, getting it racked and stacked, going through that entire process. And that's what stifled a lot of that, you know, the ability to fail fast. So, you know, these are all buzzwordy cloud stuff, but it's absolutely true in a lot of these cases. Do you want me to step through to the next one?
Well, just on this one. So I built this 5 years ago at City. So I ran FX infrastructure there, and the head of e-trading came to me. He wanted 4 new venues. He wanted to do intraday analytics. I quoted him $500,000 to build it in 9 months to get it stood up. I spoke to some friends at Google. They came in. I spoke to Thomson Reuters at the time, who were feeding us. And again, we built this thing in like 5 days. It worked. We gave it to the head of the FXE trading business. He said, this is brilliant, switch it on. Unfortunately, Thomson Reuters at the time didn't have an operational support model, didn't have anything stood behind it. But this still runs at City today. It's running for 5 years, hasn't failed. So these are the type of things that we were doing back then and we still continue to do now.
Any questions? No?
Again, this is exactly the same. We do have client proprietary data coming in here. We have our data coming in. This one's built on AWS. This was for a tier 1 bank. They asked us to co-build it with them, and then basically we handed over the entire thing. It locked us out, because obviously they've got their own proprietary and client data coming in here. But this is the big thing here, right? They were gluing our data together with their proprietary data. They had other data coming in. They were taking, I think, old data from AWS Data Exchange, but we helped them build this using our data. AWS were in the room, the client was in the room. Again, we stood it up very, very quickly, and you know, it works perfectly. And it's all OpEx. There's not a lot of CapEx out on this thing.
I think one of the important pieces is on the left there as well, because traditionally, and you know, my background as a sort of market data engineer or architect, technology speaking to technology, it's no longer the case now. So it's science, data science teams, traders who code, you know, typical developers. Business users are coming to us and asking us for these services now, rather than technology teams talking to technology teams, and that's a big game changer, really, because that's where, candidly speaking, that's where the cost sits, and that's where their budget sits as well. So they're sidestepping a lot of the traditional processes and getting that time to market. So it really is a changing landscape for us as well as our own clients.
And just on this, we now have to take the market data teams on this journey with their clients. So legacy, you know, you'd phone your market data team, you'd ask for something, it'd be stood up, they'd bill you for it. Now I've got Mr. Developer who codes at home on AWS, has to come into work and go through some nightmare coding products, you know, internally that they don't like using. So he'll come to us, via his trader, and say, this is what I want to do, can you build it? And we'll bring the CSP in and we'll build it together. So we're trying to bring that, I guess, generic products of AWS here, previously Azure. Everyone sort of understands what these things do now, and they'd rather use these than build the entire thing from scratch themselves.
Should we go to the last example?
Yeah. So this one, again, came from another client, a very frustrated trader who wanted us to do some TWAP, VWAP calcs for him. He costed this internally. It was going to cost him a significant amount of money to stand it up. He gave us the proposal that he wanted, which is down here, right? They wanted the SPX indexes, a few others in there. They wanted the TWAP, VWAP calculated between 1258 and 1300 hours. And we said, right, we can do this for you, but we'll use real-time optimized, which comes from AWS. This is feeding into Google because we like this product, BigQuery. BigQuery is like one of the best, I guess, analytics engines from all the CSPs. So we use this quite a lot. Data flow comes in, takes our real-time in. BigQuery runs here to do the calculations for the TWAP. It's stored here, so every day we'll store it for them. But then, I think 2 minutes after the calculation's finished, these guys will HTTPS into Cloud Store, take the calculations out, run it through their on-premise applications, and off they go. But we built this for them now, so we've got monitoring, we've got Stackdriver doing the monitoring for us. Refinitiv fully own and support this for them. But other people within this client now are coming to us saying, well, you've already got the landing zone, can you please feed this into it? Can you do the calculations at this time? So we're starting to see multiple clients come to us, different businesses, asking for the same type of thing. And we'll just stand it up in 24 hours. We'll just add to the landing zone. All this thing scales up. And the good thing is we can cost each business. This is what's going to cost you this month to run your calculations. This is yours, this is yours. So they know what it's going to cost them each month to run. And we can scale up or we can change the indices or the venues with 24 hours notice. So again, quick time to market, no internal BS, no problems with your internal teams to get it stood up. We just do it for them. Again, they already pay for the data, so they just pay for the connection on this one.
Question? Yep.
Have you been involved with the regulatory requirements? For example, you use calculations which within the EU are covered by method algorithmic regulation.
Yeah, so we do have to spend a lot of time speaking to exchanges and venues when we're doing calculations for clients to tell them what we're doing because they purchase the data, but we're running the calculation for them and giving them the answers. There was a bit of a grey area around that, but we've been through multiple iterations and conversations with venues that they get what we're doing now. But we're seeing more and more forums where lots of our clients are in there, the regulators are in there, the cloud service providers are in there, and they're all working together to get this thing moving down the road as fast as it can. But it is tough and challenging. Sometimes we'll build a solution for a client, and the exchange will say, I don't think you can do that, but we'll get back to you. And then they come back a week later and go, actually, that's fine, you can do that. So we are seeing a lot of complexities coming at us, but we get over most of them.
We have a large, almost a SWAT team of lawyers, legal counsels, and regulatory advisors that are working through this systematically as well. So it's a working group that goes to all of the major jurisdictions and then understands what the obligations are on us as a supplier and obviously the venues, etc. So it is quite a well-formulated plan of attack, I guess, we've got there, because that is one of the biggest objections that we'll find otherwise. So I think we've got 2 minutes left, and that was the end of the presentation, but when was it? 20 minutes ago? Or
20 minutes ago.
Half an hour ago, whatever it was. There was an announcement just made, which is, we thought we'd put it in here. It has nothing to do with us moving into the cloud and kind of the cloud journey, but it was quite exciting news. So in true Steve Jobs fashion, one more thing, it's quite good. I never thought I'd have to say that, but literally hot off the press, London Stock Exchange has just acquired May Street. So for those that may not be familiar with May Street, a US-based entity, they are very prevalent in the low latency space, so really rounds our portfolio out. Our direct feed strategy has been a little bit lacking. This brings us right to the front again, sort of sub 10 microsecond latency. It also gives us all of there's PCAP, there's raw data, there's normalized data from all of the major venues, intraday, total time series, etc. So that's the press announcement that was on the website at 11 o'clock. And hopefully you'll be hearing a lot more about that as we integrate it into our portfolio and sort of start to productize it. So exciting times there as well. So it was too good of an opportunity to miss. So so I think our time's up. We're happy to take questions either now or over lunch, or over a beer later on, whichever your preference is, and hope to meet a lot of new people and carry the conversation on. So, thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you. And for further questions, you'll find them upstairs. And the next presentation here will be in 10 minutes. So hope to see you again.